Another vendor that contributes is Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions in Mooresville, North Carolina. Executive Vice President of Sales is Jeff Clark.
Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions came to be from the supply of parts for engine building at the NASCAR engine shop for Roush Yates engines. 20 years almost of engine building as a partnership. We supplied all of our in-house machine parts. As NASCAR started to consolidate, we saw opportunities to work outside of just NASCAR, moved into open industry, started quoting on opportunities within the military. We achieved our ISO status, got our certifications in ITAR as well, which qualified us for more military work. And once we completed a few in-depth projects for military supply, it started growing more and more business. Today, we're at 100 employees at this operation. When we started, it was 19, almost 20 people. And in the last 5 years, the growth has been significant in earning military contracts. Within those military supply contracts, we quoted on the NASCAR Next Gen programs. We earned the upright and hub program, which is a very big part of our floor production right now. And it's been a very exciting process.
Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions found itself in a good position when it came time to bid for a NASCAR Next Gen contract.
When the Next Gen program was decided upon from NASCAR executives, they took all of the crucial parts and put it out for bid, open bid for anyone in manufacturing. A lot of the race teams have the capabilities to make the parts, so they also bid on these parts. We have a very unique opportunity because we have separated our machining company from the engine shop. They're two distinct locations. They operate independently, and one is a supply to the other. I think that gave us a big advantage. Typically, a race team has a machine shop to supply the racing parts that are needed, and when racing becomes the priority, a lot of times the outside projects fall in the cracks. We've made a dedicated effort at Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions to make sure the customer's first. We meet our on-time delivery and put a big focus on growing this outside business.
The upright and hub production begins with a simple block of metal.
So the two major components, three major components in the upright and hub is the upright itself, which comes from a 60-pound forged aluminum alloy from our partner Pankel in Austria. This 60-pound forging is machined down to about 15 pounds in the finished condition. The other big component is the Ackerman arm, which is about a 5-pound block of billet that gets machined down to about 2 pounds. And a lot of the design and detail from Delara, which is the design house for NASCAR Next Gen, is into these parts. That's the DNA of what we're making. We're solely the machine house that makes it. And then the third major component is the hub itself, which is a 300M steel component that's made and machined by Pankel.
The upright continues through various steps before reaching the assembling process.
So we take the raw upright and we rough machine it. We're getting all of our location points on it so that we use those location points throughout the whole process of manufacturing. Just ensures the accuracy of all the machine work starting to the same place. After it's rough machined on the Haas 1000, the UMC 1000s, it'll proceed into the floor to be checked for concentricity on the fixture, make sure the bearing races are equal and correct. From that process, once it checks out in the quality department, it'll go to our tumbling department. In there we have an MFI tumbler. It's a big canister style tumbling device. And what it does there, it's stress relieving the upright. It's also conditioning the surface of the metal to take on the hard anodize real consistently, so it's an even color, even look when it goes out to the race teams as a customer.
After the production of the upright, measures are taken to ensure that teams are not modifying the product.
So upon final assembly of the upright, we install an RFI chip to ensure that the device is loaded and charged and that the teams aren't tampering with the internal components. Racing, by its nature, everybody wants to improve parts and make them better. A lot of money is spent in those areas. The whole premise of Next Gen is a cost savings initiative. So we're taking that out of the hands of the teams. It's a little challenging because we're always in that racing DNA, want to make things better, improve them. I think once we earn their confidence on consistent performance of this part, that'll get relaxed. But the point of what we do is we secure the parts with our RFI chip. We package them in a box that are going to be delivered to the teams, and teams are called for their parts to be picked up. And we have a full service counter. And after the teams will race these parts from new, they're up to 3,000 miles worth of service life in this part. They'll return them to Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions for the rebuild. We're the only certified rebuild center for this part, just to ensure that we're not seeing any racing tampering or creative minds at work, just to keep the cost where it needs to be.
The rebuild will consist of several replacements.
So the most common parts that'll be replaced are the bearings and the seals. Those are the biggest areas of wear and tear. And the seal is a protective device to keep debris and dirt and contaminants outside of the bearing. And then through normal use, the bearings are going to be loaded. The grease, as most greases and oils do, break down. You want to have fresh bearings repacked and ready to go for the next 3,000 miles of service life.
One of the long-term goals is to get more service life in an effort to save the teams more money.
The testing that we've done preseason and all through next gen, from the OE testing now to we're having organizational tests, we've achieved almost 5,000 miles on the uprights. Pre-organizational tests, meaning before the teams had a chance to put theirs on the track, the test sets achieved right at 3,000 miles. SKF bearing and Mobile One, which is the grease for all teams, was brought in-house to conduct their investigation with us. NASCAR had their engineers on site, and we did our first disassembly and inspection and rebuild, and we're very confident in what we saw. The goal is to eventually get to more service life, which gives the teams more value. However, most teams are concerned about putting a used part on the track. They're going to want to rebuild them probably every race until they get that confidence level built up to go multiple races. I believe the uprights will probably race and then be moved to a test set, and then maybe to qualifying and get moved through the floor to get the best use but least amount of risk on the team for any potential failure.
Another goal is to have teams use the same upright through the entire race weekend.
I feel that in the first rounds of this, people may want to request a chance to make changes. It's going to be a process of gaining confidence in the parts. I believe you will at least have one full race weekend on an upright and hub before the rebuild. I don't believe we'll go back to doing the traditional qualifying set and the practice set and then the race set. That is where we spent a lot of money over the years, and it was only done because your competitor did it. It wasn't necessarily needed. If you look at most forms of racing, especially the sport car divisions, they are able to race full weekends and up to 24-hour races with no problems with the same similar components.
As with all forms of racing, competitors are going to be looking for every advantage they can.
One area that teams may be creative in working on the upright hub to make it more competitive or more speed within the part would be to break it in, meaning that they would take the brand new upright and hub, have a spinning device, whether it's a lathe or a device they build in-house to put RPMs and speed on the RPM on the hub to make it, break in and wear in, so that when it goes into race mode, it's already been through those steps. It's not fresh, it's not tight. Through heating and cooling of parts, things will settle in, find wear patterns and bearings, and you'll find probably rotational friction, relieved. And I think that's one area within the rules that teams will probably work very hard. They'll be very careful not to go beyond the service life, so they don't put a broke-in set on a car and then lead to where they're past the 3,000 miles of break-in and have a failure. So I think they're going to do a lot of testing to find out where that service life ends, and then back up from there to get the parts broken in and as free as possible within the rules.
Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions was created by NASCAR Hall of Famers Jack Roush and Robert Yates.
So Robert Yates was very innovative in cylinder head design all through the 90s, through his entire career. But in the 90s, NASCAR approached Robert about outlawing one of his cylinder heads because it was so strong on the racetrack. And the outcome of that meeting was that Robert had to offer up some of the technology to all teams, but more importantly, the Ford program had to adopt his cylinder head, and then he was the supplier to all Ford teams for the cylinder head. Now that was a big challenge because in those days it was about a 3-month process to start and finish a set of cylinder heads, just 2 cylinder heads. The only way to do this mass production was with CNC technology, which at the time did not exist in the NASCAR garage. So Robert Yates sought out help within the NASCAR community, also into NASA, which was obviously heavily, NASA, aerospace technology, and found some CNC houses and found an engineer that was willing to get involved with us. He purchased his first CNC machine in 1990, and then the production of that cylinder head started for all of the Ford teams. The challenge in that was that you gave away about a 50 horsepower advantage, and most people didn't believe it until they bought the cylinder head and put it on their engines and immediately picked up 50 horsepower. That was the proof in the pudding, so to say. The advantage for Robert Yates was that those machines helped us evolve that design to what was next and next and next, and we quickly got back our advantages. Robert was just so smart on combustion analysis without the super technology, very smart on airflow, and was able to create these power advantages just through his designs that he had in his head. With the advent or the involvement of the CNC machine, it was able to replicate the current cylinder head and then evolve it to very far advanced stages. Doug Yates was very instrumental in that. And then many years down the road, when they merged Roush and Yates, the engine companies, the CNC machine was imperative to make all the parts required to produce the amount of engines that would need to be done for both teams. So it was neat that Robert was the innovator in NASCAR with the CNC machine for the cylinder head, but it really led to the ground floor of what we have here today with 60 machines on our floor and 100 employees, and he'd be very proud to see this today.
For Jack Roush, his involvement was key in the creation of the company.
Jack will tell you he's an aviator that enjoys racing, automotive racing. Jack's passion is airplanes. He is a great pilot over the years, and we've seen all of his involvement with the P-51 Mustangs. But more importantly, such a smart mind, an intellect, and a motivator. It's amazing, all the years before Robert Yates and Jack Roush merged, the competitiveness, the headbutting that was going on, that when they finally sat down, it was amazing the similarities. One, they had the same birthday. They both claim to be nail straighteners, and what that means is instead of bending a nail and getting a brand new one out of the box, straighten the bent nail out and use it. Make sure you're using everything in that box. So very lean type manufacturing. Robert had training through some technical and vocational schools, but most of it was self-taught or tribal knowledge from other engine builders, and then him taking it to the next level. Jack had a true engineering background by his education, but the philosophies were very much the same, and a very deep passion, and the common denominator was Doug Yates. So Doug did have an engineering degree at NC State. Jack respected that, but he had the hard-nosed work ethic of Robert Yates. So Robert has truly been just a blessing to pass it on to Doug, but Doug really appreciated it and has earned it and blended both worlds of Roush and Yates to make a true company, Roush and Yates.